West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
These Justice Department officials, and we now know, apparently, White House counsel Pat Cipollone and his deputy as well, all threatening to resign in this circumstance, definitely makes them the stars of their own movies here, right? Makes them seem like they really saved us. Here's the problem. Here's the problem not just for them being, cast as heroes in their own telling of the movie. Here's the problem for the U.S. Justice Department on its own terms and today. Here's the problem that has just landed in Attorney General Merrick Garland's lap. The problem is that before, in the end, they finally all offered to quit to stop this plot. Before they did that, a bunch of them helped in the plot. They didn't just passively observe that this is what Trump wanted and this is what Trump was pursuing and this is how Trump wanted to use the U.S. Justice Department. They helped him use the Justice Department to advance this plot up to a point. Richard Donahue, the Deputy Attorney General, telling Trump, it'll be bad for you, it'll be bad for the country, we'll all quit. Yeah, he looks like a great star of the movie at that point. Well, before that, we know he took Trump's bat bleep theories about voter fraud, stealing the election from him in multiple states. And he sent those Trump bananagrams to the U.S. attorneys in Michigan and in Pennsylvania. He, as the Deputy Attorney General of the United States Justice Department, told U.S. attorneys in Michigan and Pennsylvania that they should use Justice Department resources to go check that out, to go try to substantiate these nonsense claims that were coming from the White House. Now, to be clear, these claims about voter fraud in Michigan and Pennsylvania, these didn't bubble up from local law enforcement efforts in Michigan and Pennsylvania, and that's how they got to the U.S. attorney's offices there. No. These U.S. attorneys got calls from Main Justice in D.C., from the number 2 official in the United States Department of Justice, the Trump-appointed Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue, in his official capacity, telling U.S. attorneys in those states to pursue these made-up claims that President Trump was using to cast out on the election. And yes, in the end, he threatened to quit if Trump went ahead with this one crazy scheme involving Jeff Clark and the letter to Georgia, sure. But leading up to that, he helped Trump use the Justice Department and federal prosecutors' offices to pursue these claims. And it wasn't just Donahue. Today, we have learned that former Attorney General William Barr, who has received all this positive attention for his public assertions that there wasn't any significant fraud in the election. Great, glad you said it. But what did he actually do when he was in office as Attorney General? He personally weighed in and, in fact, told at least one U.S. attorney that he needed to investigate. That Attorney General William Barr had information that he needed to investigate. He got it from Rudy Giuliani. And that U.S. attorney should make it a top priority to go investigate Rudy Giuliani's made-up bananagrams, bat bleep claims about voter fraud. These same claims that Trump was using at that moment to try to get the election overthrown. Barr did it too. It's It's not normal for the Attorney General of the United States to call a random federal prosecutor to tell him personally and directly, here's what you're going to investigate now. Make it your top priority. I'm giving you these allegations that I want to become your first priority as an investigator. You're the federal prosecutor, do this for me. That's what Bill Barr did to BJ Peck with Rudy Giuliani's made-up allegations about voter fraud in Georgia. And Peck said, yes, sir, you're the Attorney General. You want me to make him my first priority? Of course I will. So he uses the resources of his office to go start investigating those things. Peck goes on to say that as far as he knew, the division at Main Justice that actually handles election-related crimes thought that this Giuliani stuff in Georgia was not a substantive matter and therefore should not be investigated by the Justice Department. But Bill Barr apparently overruled that concern at Main Justice and said, no, I'm telling you personally to do it anyway. I'm telling you personally as Attorney General directly on the phone that I need you to look into this as your top priority, and then I'm going to go to the White House with it. So one of these surprise revelations in this report just released today by the Senate Judiciary Committee. Again, what they are investigating is what was the Justice Department's role in Trump trying to seize power, trying to stay in power even though he lost the election. One of the surprise revelations here is that the committee, based on what it's found already, they've asked the D.C. Bar to open a disciplinary investigation into the behavior of Jeff Clark. Given what he did as a lawyer, given what he did with his Justice Department role in that scheme with Trump. There's an interesting question, I think, as to whether or not what Jeff Clark did might be criminally prosecutable as well, but his law license may be on the line if the D.C. Bar investigation doesn't go well. Whether or not there's a potential crime here, something for which he could potentially be prosecuted, the committee said today that it's not yet willing to pronounce judgment on criminal matters. But I feel like the thing that's sort of missing from the analysis of this today and all the revelations here is the disturbing facts, the now disturbing timeline we've got about other senior Justice Department officials, including Attorney General William Barr, using the powers of the Justice Department in an irregular, out of chain of command kind of way to get the Justice Department to bolster Trump's made-up claims about fraud. These made-up claims that he was using to try to stay in office. All the attention is on the fact that at the end of the day, senior Justice Department officials all said, we're not going that far. You're going to have to fire us or we're going to resign en masse if you go that far. But all along the way, all of this stuff fed from Rudy Giuliani and from the fever swamps and from the QAnon conspiracy theory Reddit groups or whatever else they are, wherever else they got this stuff, it flowed into the Trump White House. It flowed from the Trump White House to the Justice Department, and then senior Justice Department officials told federal prosecutors around the country, use the resources of your office to go chase this down. It's not the way the U.S. Justice Department is supposed to work. So now that we know the Justice Department did work that way under Trump, what's the Justice Department going to do about it? What does the Justice Department do with this new knowledge that its senior officials, up to the very highest levels of the department, Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General, they tried to use the department to do those kinds of favors for Trump as Trump was trying to subvert the election results and stay in power. Once you, at a senior level of the Justice Department, use the powers of that department for that purpose, it can't be that you just get to leave and move on, and the next person who holds that job gets to what? Then try it again? What is the Justice Department going to do here? How does the Justice Department clean up after this mess? I don't know what's going to happen ultimately to Trump here. I don't know what's going to happen ultimately to Jeff Clark here. But what's the Justice Department going to do about the way it was used?
It is Friday, the 8th of October of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Well, we made it to Friday, and even though the weekends are not as tumultuous as they were during the 4 years of that guy, we're still in for some a roller coaster ride during the weekend, because apparently we have to ask Mitch McConnell's permission for everything now. Well, we avoided the debt ceiling catastrophe somehow. Well, let's put it this way. We didn't avoid it. We just kicked the can down the road. And what's up with Joe Manchin? My God. There's a clip of he, and I think he's sitting next to Dick Durbin. I think it's Dick Durbin. Maybe. I might be mistaken here. But regardless, Manchin is very uncomfortable while Schumer is giving his pretty much the takedown of the GOP. And Joe Manchin is like squirming in his seat, and he's shaking his head no, and he was more upset with Schumer taking the Republicans to task than he was upset at Mitch McConnell for pretty much taking the side of the coup. What's up with that? Yep, bought and paid for, and when you're bought and paid for, if you don't deliver, you might buy the farm. And I don't mean on credit. I mean you're going to buy the farm probably by being pushed out of a helicopter at around, I don't know, where would they go? How high? 5,000 feet? They wouldn't even have to go that high. And then I have to argue with dimwit both-siderism types who say that it's all corrupt. And then I think of Joe Manchin, and I'm all, oh, God. Well, it's not all corrupt, but we certainly have something wrong on our side. What is that? Oh, and one other little peeve that I have, a pet peeve. Joe Manchin does not own a houseboat. That is a yacht. Why do they keep calling it a houseboat? It is a yacht. Houseboats are built on barges. They don't have hulls. Please. Generally, that's the case. All right? Unless somebody bought a big old ferry. An auto ferry. And even they have pretty flat hulls. Also, houseboats don't have dual GM-V8s, gas or diesel. Yachts do. So when Joe Manchin's looking down on the plebes from his yacht, issuing a decree to all the little people about entitlements, when he pretty much inherited everything that he's got, and what he didn't inherit, he pretty much signed on for to, you don't slot your daughter into a corporation that can increase the price of the EpiPen by 700%, or was it more? Went from $14 to $700. What's up with that? Oh, I just inadvertently added an extra zero, and what do you know? Yeah, what do you know? His blind trust is managed by his son. And then Joe Manchin and his wife get tens of millions of dollars. And he's talking about, I want to be in a rewarding society. Well, no shit, Sherlock. You've been rewarded handsomely, have you not? Yes, he has. Entitlement. Started off with some entitlements by being, inheriting a coal mine or oil, whatever it was, fossil fuel corporation business. And now he has the audacity to tell us that the filibuster is the only thing holding democracy together. No, it's not. It's doing the exact opposite. Oh, yeah. And then, of course, I don't know why. It was so nice to have Facebook off for a while. But now I'm back looking at stuff, and it's hard not to respond. Especially when you think that, you might gain some headway. Well, the only headway I have noticed is that I get a lot of favorable responses, either, from the likes, the thumb up, or actual messages written down in the positive vein. There's a lot of people who are kind of pissed off at you-know-who. And we have actually a story in the curated part of the salon today about the county that I would like to sue for giving my mother COVID. Why is it that in this part of Oregon, it seems like every single right-wing Looney Tune from the whole world, but mostly from the United States and mostly from California, they've come here, and it was already, this whole area was just getting over the sundown town type shit that lasted well into the 70s. And then these idiots come here and go, oh, they had sundown towns? Let's go there. Sounds like fun. We can live free. Yeah, they can live free while the rest of us are being terrorized. So, yeah, I get into these little tete-a-tetes with not so much, COVID is all part of it. It's all a political gambit. Anything. If a liberal says that the sun is the center of the universe, they will argue with you it's not, and if you believe the sun is the center of the universe, it just proves you're a Satanist pedophile eating baby blood. Now, do you eat baby blood or drink baby blood? I don't know. I've never done it, so I don't know. They keep saying it, and of course, Soros has been invoked again. As if that's not an anti-Semitic notion. Again. My God. It's Gish Gallop or Gish Gallop. They just keep piling it on, and you think that you can defend this point, and then they're off to 10 others that you're supposed to defend, and if you don't defend it, you're a loser. As if that matters. Yes, and also the veiled threats of violence that they think will get me suspended when I say, go ahead, hit me. Because apparently when a bully says I'm going to hit you and you tell the bully, go ahead and hit me, that's bullying the bully, according to Facebook. So I don't respond in kind anymore. Now, if I were to impose my elder status and tell the little kids to shut up and sit in the corner, you brat, that might be abusive, apparently, according to Facebook. And what's up with AT&T, to shift gears here a little bit? Financing OAN. And they're supposed to be an American company. I keep telling you. Or not you, because, we are, let's be clear. We have a certain level of enlightenment. And it wasn't bestowed upon a sky god. He actually learned it. Mm-hmm. We have information. Long bouts of information over a long period of time. So, what do we do with it? I don't know. Can we presume that Merrick Garland might actually be doing something that he's, speak softly, carry a big stick? Can we hope for that? He did bring the charges against McVeigh and others in the Oklahoma City bombing. And that's why they wouldn't let him become a Supreme Court justice. Yeah, he was being punished. So, is that weighing on him right now? How far does he go? Because McVeigh really didn't have anything to do with the government, except for his military or former military status. What we're talking about now are actual government officials in the DOJ and throughout government, let alone the insurgents on January 6th. So, does Merrick Garland consider that he was being punished for bringing McVeigh to a death sentence by being denied even an interview to be a Supreme Court justice? It was a twofer, okay? The black guy wanted something, can't have that. And Merrick Garland took one of our martyrs and martyred him. Because apparently they've been thinking about, when I say they with a capital T, the forces arrayed against representative democracy, they've been at this for quite a while. I keep telling everybody. The old Soviet fighters adopted the 70-year Soviet plan. They are in for the long haul. They know it's going to take some time to break down the fiber of America. And they've done it. To the point where people will say, public health, that helps another person, forget it. That's not America. That's not neighborly. That's living in the walled communities of old Europe when warlords ruled the roost. You know, during the Enlightenment, those who came over here and wanted to, pretty much create a representative democracy, that was the reason they did it. Because they tired of living in walled communities where warlords ruled the land. And apparently the modern-day warlords look upon us as mere serfs. How dare we tell them what to do? How dare we? Well, we not only dare, we do. Because, after all, this is America. And, we take care of it. You will see. All right. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, I already went through what Merrick Garland's going to have to do, and hopefully he will. But all those government officials acquiescing to Trump, for years. Let's be clear about that, too. We can't say that, they suddenly had a bout of patriotism. No. They allowed it to happen because they thought they could ride the tiger. Well, it's a little bit harder than they anticipated now, isn't it? On the rest of the menu, in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, President Biden will restore 3 national monuments that were capriciously cut by Trump. One of the whacko Josephine County, Oregon County Commissioners said to ask God about the COVID-19 vaccination because you can't trust doctors. This is what I have to put up with here. This is in regular session, too. They don't hide it. And I would like to sue them for mismanagement. Is that possible? For giving my mother COVID. Me too, but my mother's in a much more fragile position still because of these idiots not only in action, but taking the side of the virus. Why are they still in office? Because I live in an area where apparently a lot of people have taken the side of the virus. And a Microsoft report revealed that Russia is behind almost 60% of all detected state-backed hacks. Something that we knew and, we knew to be true. And now we know it to be true. After the break, we move to the chef's table where Greek lawmakers ratified a major defense pact with France. And far-right Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz, the horror, made clear he did not plan to step down after anti-corruption prosecutors said he is a target in a bribery investigation, and it's not the first one. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link. The chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, though she is quite busy with Netroots Nation 21 this year with Ricky. And they are taking care of the... Is it a task? Anyway, they're at Netroots Nation in the virtual world. And stay tuned because we'll have some interviews and news coming from Netroots Nation 21. And so we look forward to that soon and in the weeks ahead. Thank you, Kelly, for doing all that you do. If you would look across the page from that chat room link all the way to the left, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, there is our Patreon page, or the link to our Patreon page. And if you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink, and if you could afford to send those funds our way once a month, we are able to use those dollars that you send us, and we pay our bills. Yes, we do. You know, we do have to pull money out of our own wallets. Who does that? We do. Anyway, we are making these appeals for money because the bills keep going up and machinery is always breaking. What's up with that? Anyway, you help put a big dent in our bill paying, which then allows us to fly under the radar and continue resisting this hostile takeover of the United States of America by forces foreign and domestic. All right, thank you. All kidding aside, we would be unable to do any of this without you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can go to @NetrootsRadio. How simple is that? Thank you, Tom, for taking care of that and so much more as well. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime. And then I get that linked up on Twitter and other social media platforms because the show notes and links are very important to this whole, well, it's a salon, and but you need to know what the real reportage said, and that's why the links and the show notes are very important, so check it out. You can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and please, if you would, pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and really wherever podcasts can be found. Okay, this first offering here, you know, I'm a little upset that there's been, as far as I know, there's been no criminal referrals for ignoring congressional subpoenas. You know, nobody did that until Trump came around, right? Who does that? Of course, we never had a president who was pretty much installed by Vladimir Putin. All these strange coincidences, and now apparently the law doesn't apply to any of these mobsters. Why? Okay, I had to get it off my chest because maybe we can undo the damage that Trump has wrought. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of the Associated Press by Matthew Daly and Lindsay Whitehurst. President Joe Biden will restore 2 sprawling national monuments in Utah that have been at the center of a long-running public lands dispute and a separate marine conservation area in New England that recently has been used for commercial fishing. Environmental protections at all 3 monuments had been stripped by Donald Trump. The White House announced the changes last night, Thursday, ahead of a ceremony expected today. Utah Governor Spencer Cox, a Republican, expressed disappointment in Biden's decision to restore Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante monuments, which the Trump administration downsized significantly in 2017. The monuments cover vast expanses of southern Utah where red rocks reveal petroglyphs and cliff dwellings and distinctive buttes bulge from a grassy valley. That's a mighty fine butte. No, that's a mound. And a right purty one, too. Trump invoked the century-old Antiquities Act to cut 2 million acres from the 2 monuments, calling restrictions on mining and other energy production a massive land grab that should never have happened. Really. His actions slashed bears' ears on lands considered sacred to Native American tribes by 85% to just over 200,000 acres. They cut Grand Staircase Escalante by nearly in half, leaving it at about 1 million acres. Both monuments were created by Democratic presidents. The White House said in a statement that Biden was fulfilling a key promise to restore the monuments to their full size and upholding the long-standing principle that America's national parks, monuments, and other protected areas are to be protected for all time and for all people. His actions were among a series of steps the administration has taken to protect public lands and waters, including moves to halt oil leasing in Alaska's Arctic National Wildlife Refuge and prevent road building in the Tongass National Forest in Alaska, the nation's largest federal forest. Biden's plan also restores protections in the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts National Monument in the Atlantic Ocean, southeast of Cape Cod. Trump had made a rule change to allow commercial fishing at the Marine Monument, an action that was heralded by fishing groups but derided by environmentalists who pushed Biden and Interior Secretary Deb Haaland to restore protections against fishing. Protecting the Marine Monument safeguards the invaluable area for the fragile species that call it home and demonstrates the administration's commitment to science, said Jen Felt, Ocean Campaign Director for the Conservation Law Foundation. Ted Sickinger of the Oregonian brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. An elected official representing Oregon's 12th most populous county told residents listening to a public meeting they should put their faith in God, not doctors or scientists, when it comes to their decision on whether to be vaccinated against COVID-19. You're just going to have to ask God and pray for wisdom on this one because you can't trust the politicians. You can't trust the doctors. You certainly can't trust the CDC or any World Health Organization, Josephine County Commissioner Darren Fowler said during the virtual meeting of the 3-person Board of Commissioners. Fowler was reacting to public comments at the meeting and the threat that Josephine County, like many rural areas of the state with low vaccination rates among healthcare workers, could face an exodus of unvaccinated hospital and medical clinic personnel when Kate Brown's vaccine mandate for healthcare workers kicks in on October 18th. Fowler's comments run counter to an overwhelming body of evidence that vaccines are safe and effective. The Oregon Health Authority has consistently said vaccination is the safest, most effective, and most reliable way to stay safe from COVID-19. The state public health agency has spent months attempting to combat misinformation and vaccine hesitancy, in part by encouraging people to talk to your doctor about your concerns. I suppose you're supposed to go to your minister so he can lay hands upon you. Yeah. It's clear that science-based interventions from vaccinations to masks to social distancing have slowed the spread of COVID-19 and saved lives, Rudy Owens, a spokesman for the agency, said in an email yesterday, Thursday. But these interventions would not work unless the vast majority of Oregonians were willing to get vaccinated, wear a mask, and be careful about social gatherings, except we have leaders like this telling people to flaunt the law, to flaunt being a good neighbor. No, you don't flaunt being a good neighbor. You flaunt being a bad neighbor. Self-interest. Me, me, me. The party of responsibility? Yeah. The remarks from Fowler and the other elected officials during the meeting came despite Josephine County being one of the hardest hit by COVID-19 during the summer Delta wave. Yeah, my mom caught it there. Only 53% of county adults are fully vaccinated, compared to a statewide average of 70%, and rates that top 80% in some of the statewide or state's most populous areas. It's also the largest or the latest example of COVID misinformation, vaccine skepticism, and anti-mandate rhetoric that county commissioners have been espousing for months. Earlier this summer, YouTube removed a video of one of the commission's regular meetings for misinformation. Of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Russia accounted for most state-sponsored hacking detected by Microsoft over the past year, with a 58% share, mostly targeting government agencies and think tanks in the U.S., followed by Ukraine, Britain, and European NATO members, the company said. The devastating effectiveness of the long undetected SolarWinds hack, it mainly breached information technology businesses, including Microsoft, also boosted Russian state-backed hackers' success rate to 32% in the year ending June 30th, compared with only 21% in the preceding 12 months. China, meanwhile, accounted for fewer than 1 in 10 of the state-backed hacking attempts Microsoft detected, but was successful 44% of the time in breaking into targeted networks, Microsoft said in its second annual Digital Defense Report, which covers July 2020 through June 2021. While Russia's prolific state-sponsored hacking is well known, Microsoft report offers unusually specific detail on how it stacks up against that by other U.S. adversaries. The report also cited ransomware attacks as a serious and growing plague, with the United States by far the most targeted country, hit by more than triple the attacks of the next most targeted nation. Ransomware attacks are criminal and financially motivated. By contrast, state-backed hacking is chiefly about intelligence gathering, whether for national security or commercial or strategic advantage, and thus generally tolerated by governments, with U.S. cyber operators among the most skilled. The report by Microsoft, which works closely with Washington government agencies, does not address U.S. government hacking. The SolarWinds hack was such an embarrassment to the U.S. government, however, that some Washington lawmakers demanded some sort of retaliation. President Joe Biden has had a difficult time drawing a red line for what cyber activity is permissible. He has issued vague warnings to Vladimir Putin to get him to crack down on ransomware criminals, but several top administration cybersecurity officials said this week that they have seen no evidence of that. Indeed. All right, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, the ayes have it. Ask those over a certain age what they remember when they hear the name Tammy Faye Bakker, and chances are they'll say her eyes. Hence the name of the movie, The Eyes of Tammy Faye. Even by drag queen standards, Tammy loaded up on the makeup, especially around her eyes. Some would also remember that for a period of time, she was one of the most hated women anywhere, symbolizing the worst of 1980s America and the worst of religion, greed, excess, and hypocrisy. For those that don't know, Tammy and her husband Jim Bakker were pioneers in the religious TV business. Their North Carolina-based TV ministry took in millions from viewers before Jim was eventually convicted of various fraud charges. Tammy herself was never charged, but somehow managed to gather more ire than her husband, becoming the punchline of many late-night TV jokes that mocked the couple's downfall. However, she did live long enough to achieve a comeback of sorts in the early aughts and was seen as an LGBTQ icon until her death in 2007. As the film portrays, behind the clownish exterior was a woman who maintained core Christian beliefs in love and charity, not excluding gay people, which was shocking for the time. Jessica Chastain, who stars and produces here, elevates the film above standard biopic fare and makes you feel empathy for her complex character, especially as things come crashing down. She nails the Minnesota accent as well as the charisma that helped Tammy relate to so many. While the supporting cast is effective, it's really Chastain that carries this one, and while it's impossible to know what the real Tammy would have thought of The Eyes of Tammy Faye, it's likely she would have appreciated the capture of her humanity behind the public caricature. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Karen Hopkin. Wintering in the northernmost regions of Alaska is no walk in the park. It's cold and dark and sometimes snowy, but that didn't stop dinosaurs from nesting there during the Cretaceous period.
Dinosaurs were not only just living in the Arctic 70 million years ago in what's now northern Alaska, but they were actually capable of reproducing there as well.
Patrick Druckenmiller of the University of Alaska Fairbanks and the director of the University of Alaska Museum of the North.
In discovering that they were reproducing there, it has an important implication that strongly suggests that they were actually year-round residents in the Arctic.
Now, the Arctic wasn't as chilly then as it is today, but it was below freezing, with temps dipping down to around 14 degrees Fahrenheit, occasional bouts of snowfall, and, of course, 4 months of winter darkness. If living in those conditions seems daunting, so was obtaining the study samples.
In order to get and reach our field sites, we actually have to drive from Fairbanks about 500 miles north up to Prudhoe Bay in the oil field. From there, we board small planes and helicopters and we fly out to our field site. And then we put together a couple of boats, and then we use the rivers up there as our highways.
When they spot a rock that looks particularly promising, usually in a bluff or cliff face along the river, they climb up and start collecting sediment, which then gets hauled back to the lab to be processed and examined.
We wash it, we screen it, we sieve it, and we collect and save every particle larger than 0.5 millimeter. And what we do then is inspect every grain by grain by grain, under a microscope, looking for these little remains, the bones and the teeth of what we now understand to be baby dinosaurs.
These itty-bitty bones and teeth are way too tiny to have come from an adult dinosaur, even a wee one. And they lack the features one would expect to see in specimens from an animal that's developmentally mature. So far, Druckenmiller and his team have dug up species from 7 different dino families, from big duck-billed dinos, ceratopsians and tyrannosaurs, to smaller thescelosaurs, leptoceratops, dromaeosaurs, and troodontids. The findings are described in the journal current biology. Now, why does the presence of baby bones suggest that the dinosaurs weren't just passing through?
Now, the reason we think they were year-round residents is because if you reproduce in the Arctic, you have really a very limited time of year to do your business.
Egg-laying animals don't usually engage in reproductive activities in the winter.
So if you laid an egg in the spring and that egg took 5 to 6 months to hatch, which is what we understand the incubation period to be for some dinosaurs, such as duck-billed dinosaurs, then that means your eggs are hatching out at the end of the summer.
Which doesn't really leave enough time to head south for the winter with the family. And that raises probably the most important question.
So if you're overwintering there, how do you deal with the cold?
Some of the smaller species, like thescelosaurs and leptoceratops, could have burrowed underground and hibernated. And other researchers have unearthed evidence that some larger dino species actually sported feathers, including young T-Rexes and their shaggy-coated cousin, Utyrannus huali.
We're pretty certain that most of these meat-eating dinosaurs might have had their own down parka, as it were, to deal with the harsh winter conditions.
Even more intriguing, the evidence suggests that these Arctic dinos were likely warm-blooded.
We don't actually find fossils of cold-blooded land-living animals alongside our dinosaurs. We've never found turtles. We've never found crocs or lizards. The only thing we find besides dinosaurs up there are birds and mammals, which are also warm-blooded.
To date, Druckenmiller and his colleagues have spent decades braving the elements to figure out what made this remote polar location an attractive place to raise a family. At least for dinos who didn't mind the cold.
It's definitely a labor of love.
And a product of stick-to-itiveness, particularly when it comes to clinging to an Arctic cliff face to collect a bunch of baby teeth. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Humpkin.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Are you losing sleep over the 12th Amendment? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. The answer probably is, of course not. What's the 12th Amendment? The 12th Amendment, ratified in 1804, sets forth how the Electoral College is supposed to work, how the votes are certified and counted, and what happens if no candidate has a majority. That messy picture brings us to the Electoral Count Act of 1887, the law that established the Electoral College's procedures. Still used today, it's a law with ambiguities and some poorly drafted provisions. Among its problems, a sentence that says that a state legislature can appoint electors of its own choice if the state has, quote, failed to make a choice on Election Day, whatever that means. There are other inartful parts of that law that a few argue are unconstitutional and thus allow the vice president, in essence, to count only the votes he wants to. Clarity in the law is possible. But so far, the Congress has taken no action in that regard, and state legislatures have rushed in the opposite direction, passing laws that allow them to ignore the votes and instead select their own electors to choose the president. These laws steer us down a bad road to authoritarianism. So, yes, we should be losing sleep over the 12th Amendment, the anti-democratic Electoral College, and the laws that will decide future presidential elections. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1933. That was the day garment factory owners locked out dressmakers in several shops throughout Los Angeles. The women garment workers, overwhelmingly Mexican, had been organizing with the ILGWU for over a month. They began conducting strikes at selected shops the previous month to press their demands. The women wanted union recognition, a 35-hour work week, end to homework, shop floor committees, a guaranteed wage, and more. Historian Douglas Monroy observed that their demands reflected the harsh working conditions that they faced. It was a volatile, competitive seasonal industry. Businesses worked tirelessly to undercut each other and job out the work. Women workers were routinely unemployed or underemployed, subject to widespread wage theft and discrimination. They were frustrated by promises of the new Industrial Recovery Act, which promised the right to organize but held no provisions for enforcement. Employers flaunted the new legislation and continued to discharge workers for union activity. When the employers forced a lockout, Local 96 looked to the AFL's Central Labor Council to sanction a general dressmakers strike, which started 4 days later on October 12th. As many as 3,000 Latina strikers maintained solid picket lines despite dozens of arrests. ILGWU organizer Rose Posada arrived from New York to help with food distribution and packing the picket lines. The rank-and-file leadership produced a bilingual strike bulletin and made daily radio announcements. The strike ended in arbitration that conceded few gains to the garment workers. But the women of Local 96 continued to organize throughout the Los Angeles area. They led a series of strikes that would eventually win the closed shop.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 42 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of only 62 degrees Fahrenheit today. Considerable cloudiness throughout the day. Winds will be light and variable. Some clouds overnight. Lows in the upper 30s. It's getting chilly. Winds will be light and variable. Slight temperature increase tomorrow with sunny conditions prevailing, and we'll get up to about 68 degrees, and winds will be light and variable. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County, right next to Josephine County, continue to spike. We now count 222,014 confirmed cases, and our deceased have also increased by several, and we now stand at 291. Ragweed pollen is moderate right outside the window here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is good at 23 parts per million, and that daytime UV index is moderate at 4. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.05 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles, and relative humidity remains at 100%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 63 and cloudy. Paris is 65 and sunny. Rome is 71 degrees and fair. Kyiv is 51 and fair. Kabul is 63 degrees and fair. Hong Kong is 77 degrees with heavy rain. Tokyo is 75 degrees and clear. Sydney, Australia is 62 and clear. San Francisco, California is 52 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York, New York is 71 degrees Fahrenheit and partly cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Elena Bekatoros and Derek Gatopoulos of The Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Greece's lawmakers ratified a landmark defense deal with France that includes a mutual assistance clause in case of an armed attack against either a pact that has irked fellow NATO member Turkey. The 5-year agreement was announced in Paris last week by the Prime Minister Mitsotakis and French President Macron. Greece will also announce plans to buy 3 French frigates, a deal due to be finalized by the end of the year. The agreement was opposed by the main left-wing opposition party, Syriza, which argued that it imposes too many concessions on Athens, including the risk of involvement in France's overseas military operations. Greece is pinning much of its defense strategy on close military cooperation with France and the United States, as it remains locked in a volatile dispute with neighbor Turkey over sea and airspace boundaries. Athens is currently concluding negotiations with the U.S. to extend and possibly increase the scale of a mutual defense cooperation agreement that allows U.S. troops access to Greek military bases.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Anonymous staff at the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz denied wrongdoing and made clear he did not plan to step down after anti-corruption prosecutors said he is a target in a bribery investigation. However, the partner party and Kurz's coalition government said that the probe created a disastrous impression and raised questions about the chancellor's ability to act. Prosecutors said on Wednesday they were investigating Kurz, 9 other people, and 3 unidentified organizations on suspicion of breach of trust and bribery. They searched the Chancellery, the Finance Ministry, and the offices of Kurz's conservative Austrian People's Party. The case centers on allegations that Finance Ministry money was used between 2016 and at least 2018 to pay for manipulated polls that were favorable to Kurz and published in a newspaper without being declared as advertising. Kurz became his party's leader and then chancellor in 2017 after previously serving as Austria's foreign minister. In a separate case, anti-corruption authorities put the 35-year-old chancellor under investigation in May on suspicion of making false statements to a parliamentary commission, an allegation he also rejected. Kurz, in a Wednesday night interview with public television network ORF, denied responsibility for any wrongdoing involving the published polls. This is absolutely no indication that I directed what adverts or polls were commissioned at the Finance Ministry, he said. He said that text messages from him contained no instructions or requests. And at the same time, prosecutors put the theory out there that everything was directed by Kurz. The chancellor said he was very calm about the accusations. The Green Party, Kurz's junior coalition partner since he won a second term in early 2020, was far less relaxed. The Vice Chancellor Werner Kogler tweeted that the impression is disastrous and the allegations must be cleared up thoroughly. Well, I'm sure they will. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here on Monday, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte coère. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.